afternoon and welcome. We're going to come to order. Welcome to the February the 20th, 2018 convening of the Baltimore City Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. A few house rules before we get underway. If you have a pager or a cell phone, anything that makes any kind of electronically generated sound, anything that plays a ringtone, a chime, rings a bell, etc., beeps, we ask that a minimum you please turn those devices to a vibrate only, if not off position. Similarly, to the extent that you need to have a conversation with someone, we ask you to take those conversations out the double doors to your rear. The reason for those rules are pretty simple and straightforward. You'll note that there are a number of microphones which are arrayed around us up here, and those microphones are all very sensitive, not only for the purpose of amplification, but also for the purpose of recording these proceedings. And cell phones, pagers, conversations, and the like going off in the gallery interrupt not just the general conduct of these proceedings, but also interrupt or interfere with the recording of these proceedings. Similarly, those of you who are sitting forward of the wall above you, if you turn around, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3 video cameras, which are all mounted up there, and there are 1, 2 video cameras, which are mounted on the wall up here behind us. These proceedings are being streamed live on the website for the city's cable access network, as well as recorded for subsequent tape-delayed broadcast on said network and stored on the city's YouTube channel. So similarly, conversations, cell phones, pagers, etc., interrupt that process as well as interfere with the general conduct of these proceedings. You're certain, I guess, moving on to another topic, voting. We'll be voting at the end of the day, and you're certainly more than welcome to hang around and enjoy a civics lesson if you so choose. But if you've got anything else to do on what is a absolutely splendid late February afternoon, that's quite understandable, and you can call into the zoning board office in the morning to find out how we ruled in your case. If you take out pen and paper, I'll read the number off for the zoning board a couple of times, and that number is 410-396-4301. Again, 410-396-4301. You will, however, need to wait until you receive the formal written notice of the outcome of your case, which should be forthcoming in about 3 to 4 weeks before you'll be able to pull your permits. We certainly ask you to please not build in the city of Baltimore without first obtaining all of your proper permits. If you haven't already done so, if you hear in opposition to any case today, you'll need to sign in on our sign-in sheet, which is being held up by Mr. French. The sign-in sheet allows us to know not just generally which cases have opposition attached to them, but also allows us to know who needs to receive those aforementioned written notices I just talked about. In addition, if there are any cases which wind up getting postponed today, if those cases don't go forward today, we need to know who you are and how to reach you for when those cases do go forward. And so that's something which we cannot do unless we know who you are and have your address and are able to reach you. The procedure for today is the same as it is for all of our hearing days. When your case is called, you'll come forward. The appellant will stand to our left or your right. The opposition, if any, will stand to our right or your left. Once everyone is up here, we'll get you folks sworn in, and then the appellant will be given the opportunity to start things off, to tell us what it is that they're proposing, present any documents, witnesses, or other evidence in support of the arguments that they're making to the board, respond to any questions which the board may have, and introduce whatever other facts they deem are relevant for the board's consideration. Once the appellant has concluded their presentation, we'll turn to the opposition, if any, who'll be given the opportunity to do the same, present their documents, witnesses, etc., in support of their arguments and positions, and respond to any questions which the board might have. Once the opposition is concluded, the appellant will be given the opportunity to respond to any points that are brought up by their opposition, and then offer a closing statement. We won't be going back and forth and necessarily delaying things any longer than is necessary. We'll generally hear the cases in the order in which they appear on our docket after we first dispense with some preliminary issues. First, we have one case which has been withdrawn, and that is 2017-46, 12 West Montgomery Street. That case has been withdrawn and will not be heard today. Next, we have the cases which are on our consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of cases where the board staff has reviewed these files and the board has concluded that we have sufficient information to approve these appeals on a consent basis based upon the records submitted at this time. We'll call all the consent cases together as a group. Please try to stay in the order in which you're called. Once everyone is up here, we'll get you all sworn in as a group, and then we'll call each case in turn, and you'll be given the opportunity at that point to offer any material that you would like to have added to the record at that time. First case on the consent agenda is 2017-462, 3738 Gulf Street, John Lee. After that will be 2017-479, 4001 Hudson Street, Elisa Hertzmark. Then will be 2017-484, 4432 Buchanan Avenue, Alex Scally. So that will be 2018-1, 605 South Glover Street, Praful Patel. And then we'll have 2018-2, 2543 Eastern Avenue, Matt Nofel. After that will be 2018-5, 524 East Fort Avenue, Brian Chance. And 2018-6, 2203 St. Paul Street, Nate Prettle. Then 2018-14, 115 Marketplace, Jeffrey Greenberg. 2018-17, 711 South Port Street, Dave Carey. And last, we'll have 2018-18, 5604 York Road, Jonathan Fishman. Okay. All right. If all those intending to give testimony can please raise their right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Calling the first case, 2017-462, 3738 Gulf Street, John Lee.
I am Stephanie Lee.
Good afternoon, ma'am. We have this as an application to construct a second floor rear addition with a rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Ms. French, anything on behalf of the planning department?
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Ms. Lee, is there anything further you would like to add to supplement the record in your case?
No, sir.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal. Good luck. Next up, 2017-479, 4001 Hudson Street, Lisa Hertzmark. Or?
Bob Rosenfeld for Lisa Hertzmark, who will be coming back to work soon, we think.
Great to hear. All right, Mr. Rosenfeld, we have this as an application to raise structures, subdivide lot, and construct 36 new single-family row houses with parking at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Yes, Planning Department notes the Planning Commission reviewed and approved the subdivision and development plans for this property on February 1st of this year and recommends approval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Rosenfeld, is there anything further you'd like to offer to supplement the record in your
Nope.
case?
No, sir.
Okay. The zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next, 2017-44, 4432 Buchanan Avenue, Alex Scally.
Hi, how are you?
Good afternoon. We have this as an application to construct a one-story rear addition at this location. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
And Mr. Scally, anything further you would like to offer to supplement the record in your case?
No.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we've determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal.
Okay,
Go
thank
on.
you. Thank you very much.
Next, 2018-1, 685 South Glover Street, Praful Patel.
The address again, please? 605?
605 South Glover Street.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Your name, sir?
Clark Matthews with Little Village Properties.
Okay. And Mr. Matthews, we have that you're here for Mr. Patel?
Yeah, he's our architect.
Okay. All right. So you're here for yourself.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. We have this as an application to construct first and second floor rear additions with rear and rooftop decks at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Matthews, anything further you would like to add to supplement the record? in your
No,
case?
thank you.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Collected.
Thank you.
Next up, 2018-2, 2543 Eastern Avenue, Matt Nofel.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition and rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. French, anything with the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Nofel, anything further you'd like to add to supplement the record in your case?
No, sir.
Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Next, 2018-5, 524 East Fort Avenue, Brian Chase. Calling again, 2018-5, 524 East Fort Avenue, Brian Chance. All right. Try again. 2018-6, 2203 St. Paul Street, Nate Prettle.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to use this premises as 4 dwelling units with parking. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Ms. French for the planning department.
Planning Department has reviewed this application and has no objection. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Prettle, anything further you'd like to add to supplement the record in your case?
Sure, I'll add that I know there was a question that came up about the off-street parking, and I submitted some additional written testimony that the existing parking pad fits 2 cars side by side, but as a practical matter, the tenants will really park 4 cars back there by stacking, so
Okay. And I think we do have that in the record. Anything else?
that's it.
Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Great, thank you.
Good luck. Next, 2018-14, 115 Marketplace, Jeffrey Greenberg.
Yes.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a 9th floor rooftop identification sign at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department has worked with the sign company and others on the design of this particular installation. The department recommends approval of the application be subject to the condition that the sign is erected and maintained in accordance with plans and designs approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Greenberg, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Yes.
All right. Anything further you would like to add to supplement the record in your case?
No.
No, we're fine.
Okay. Well, good. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. 2018-17, 711 South Port Street, Dave Carey. Calling again, 2018-17, 711 South Port Street, Dave Carey. All right, and 2018-18, 5604 York Road, Jonathan Fishman.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, gentlemen. Can you identify yourselves for the record?
I'm Evan Altman on behalf of Jonathan Fishman.
And Nick Fertig.
And so,
Nick Fertig, F-E-R-T-I-G.
okay. And gentlemen, we have this as an application to use a portion of the premises for a craft brewery with accessory sales and on-premises consumption under a Class 5 liquor license. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the liquor license, is that something that you're getting or that you already possess?
That's something we'll be obtaining.
Okay. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has reviewed this application and recommends approval. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and gentlemen, the consent approval in this case will be conditioned on the obtaining of the Class 5 liquor license.
Understood.
And anything further you'd like to offer to supplement the record in your case?
Nope.
Okay. zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient patience to approve review. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll turn to the remainder of our docket, which will include cases cases where opposition is signed in. And frequently, we've found that opposition is the result of either a lack of communication or miscommunication among the parties, and it can frequently be useful to offer the parties an opportunity to have a dialogue amongst one another to see if they can resolve whatever dispute they have between them. Obviously, if there are two opposing sides engaged in a dispute and they approach the board and ask the board to resolve the dispute, one of the two sides is bound to go away disappointed with the outcome. So this is your opportunity to avoid that unhappy fate. We're going to call off the cases where opposition is signed in. I think that there are only two. And you can stand where you are. We'll just ask if there has been any dialogue between the parties and whether the parties would like to have or continue a dialogue now. You certainly don't have to take the opportunity to speak with one another, but we certainly do encourage and appreciate it. First case where opposition is signed in is 2017-467, 400 North Patterson Park Avenue. Okay. And folks, have you had an opportunity to speak before? No?
I don't know what the opposition is.
Okay. Would you like an opportunity to talk and see if you can get whatever questions you have answered? Okay, just step out the double doors to your rear, and when you're ready to move forward, you can just come back in and we'll call you in turn. Okay, 2018-15, the west side of Rusk Avenue, 430 feet and 11 inches north of Whitney Avenue. Okay, and folks, have you had an opportunity to speak?
We have spoken.
Okay. Do you like the opportunity to continue to speak, or do you think that further dialogue won't be productive at this point?
We certainly are interested in continuing to talk with the owner, but to date, there's not been a compromise reached regarding the issues.
Okay. I won't twist your arm, but you can certainly speak now. You're towards the end of the docket, so it's going to be a while till we get to you. So you can either choose to speak or not. Okay. Okay. All right. What? Okay. Ms. Arnold? Okay. Which case are you here on, ma'am?
3119 Eastern Avenue.
Okay. 8, yes. All right. And Mr. Kopp? All right. Folks, have you had, you can stand, ma'am. Have you had an opportunity to speak before? Would you like to speak now?
The Highlandtown Community Association did put in a position letter that we oppose it, but I'm also an impacted resident within 2 blocks of the proposed development, and I firmly oppose it. So
Okay,
there is
that's
no-
nice. I'm just asking if you would like to have a dialogue right now.
I don't need to have a dialogue because unless are we trying to reach a compromise
Well,
or?
time out. All right. So if you recall, a few minutes ago, I just said what the purpose of this was, which was that if there are two sides engaged in a dispute, if you go through with a contested hearing, one of you will lose. So if you don't want to be faced with the prospect of losing, you can have a dialogue to see what issues you can resolve. You may not be 1,000% happy with the agreement that you reach, but it's an agreement that you can live with, as opposed to outright losing. So you can choose to speak now and avoid the prospect of losing, or you can sit in your opposing camps, wait until your case is called when one of you will lose. Which would you like to do?
I guess we need to speak.
Okay, so just step outside, and if you get something worked out, just come on back in and let us know, and we'll call you in turn. 2018, all right. So before we get into our cases, you'll note that there are 3 board members present today. And well, I guess at this point, the only cases which we have are unopposed cases. So this is less of a concern for the folks who have unopposed cases as opposed to folks who have opposed cases. But there are only 3 board members who are present today. If your case were to be challenged, and since your cases are unopposed, that's unlikely, but if your case were to be challenged on the base, a opponent could raise the prospect of whether or not the board was properly constituted. You can either choose to waive that objection now and have the board hear your case, or you can wait until the board has 4 members available to hear your case. At this point, I don't think our next hearing is confirmed until late March. So that's kind of your own choice there. You don't have to necessarily decide that now. You can wait until your case is called to make that decision. In addition, when there's a full panel of the board, you need a supermajority or more than 2/3 of the board in order to prevail. So that would mean that you'd need 4 members to vote in favor of your appeal, as opposed to as currently constituted with only 3 members. You would have to have a unanimous board support for your appeal. So that may be another issue if you have something that's particularly troublesome. But again, that's not a decision that you have to make right this moment. You can wait until your case is called. Calling the first case, which is 2018-11, 1638 East Baltimore Street, Olga Yankulina.
Who are you?
Afternoon, ma'am. We have this as an application to construct a 10-foot high fence and gate along the rear lot line. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ma'am, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. And do we have staff reports?
Just planning.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Ms. Yankolina, if you would you tell us what you're proposing here?
Sure. So currently I have a gate and fence in the back lot that is 7.5 feet. That was previously built before I purchased the house. It is about 1 inch wider than my car. So the first time I tried pulling in, I scratched my car. So the gate needs to be widened. Since I'm replacing the whole gate, I decided if I'm building it to the current height at 7.5 feet, which is over the city maximum of 6 feet. After discussing with the company who's going to be doing the construction, we decided to go with 10 feet because the cost was almost the same, and that provides additional security with people not being able to hop the fence. Because a 7.5-foot fence can still be pretty easily hopped if you put a trash can next to it and jump over it. I live in not the best area. It's within walking distance to several drug rehab facilities. I also have a dog who can probably jump a 6-foot fence. So for my security, my dog's safety, and my comfort level, I feel better building a 10-foot fence, and it also matches the current the style in the back alley too, since all of the fences are greater than 6 feet. And all of my neighbors are in agreement, and also my neighbor to my left, when they were doing the rehab on the house that I purchased, they actually left the gate on lock, and somebody broke into his house using the back alley access, which he said he filed the police report.
Okay. All right. Any questions? No. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
2018-3, 1118 Battery Avenue, John Lowry. Afternoon, sir.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. We have this an application to construct a first floor side, second and third floor rear additions with rear and rooftop decks at this location. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Sir, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. And do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lowry, I think that you were here previously, and this is a slightly modified plan. So why don't you talk about what's being proposed, and specifically if you can address any alterations that have been made to the plan?
Well, it's actually greatly modified. I was trying to compose the two lots to one, and there's a supposed 2-foot-6-inch alley owned by the city or somebody. Well, I tried, the title company couldn't answer the questions the city wanted, so I just gave up. The house sat there for 3 months. So I'm building on the battery lot. I will be selling both lots to whomever buys it for parking reasons. And we reduced the structure by about 18 feet. So I'm only building on the Battery Avenue lot now.
Gotcha.
And your alley will be there, even though my 10-foot wide house is the only part of the alley and everybody else has already built through it. You'll have it there though.
All right.
My existing house actually encroaches past the alley, and I'm tearing it down and giving back the alley.
Okay. All right. Any other questions at this point? No. All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Uh, 2018-8, 3119 Eastern Avenue, Brian Kopp. Okay, that's right. 2018-9, 1923 St. Paul Street, Max Dolphin.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to use the premises as 3 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. If you would, raise your right hand to be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
All right. Do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is in the Charles North Revitalization Area Urban Renewal Area. The specific urban renewal plan lists this property as a contributing structure in its Appendix A, which includes design guidelines and standards for renovation of existing contributing structures. Specifically, the plan requires what it calls a notice to proceed, which is now known as an authorization to proceed, for any work that involves the exterior of the property. Accordingly, the Department of Planning recommends approval of the application, if granted, be subject to the condition that all exterior renovations and alterations, including window replacement if done, are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Dolphin, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Sorry? Yeah.
Are the conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a bit about what's being proposed here?
Well, we're just taking a old rooming house and turning it into 3 units. It's a 3-story structure. I believe we had in the notes where it said that the letter from planning stating that we only had 1 parking spot in the back, but there's really 2. The concrete's wide enough to fit 2 cars. So I just wanted to add that to the application.
Okay. And I do see from the aerial, it appears as though it's similar dimensions as neighboring properties which do have 2.
Correct.
Which appear to have 2 cars parked side by side. All right. And what's the interior condition of the property right now?
It's dilapidated.
Okay. Like,
Baltimore Classic.
how is it set up inside? Is it is there some information in the record about a permit previously being pulled to make it a single-family dwelling?
I don't believe so.
Sorry?
I don't believe so.
Well, I'm saying, how is it sort of laid out?
Right now?
Yeah.
You can't really walk in. So, I mean, Yeah, I would have to, bring somebody that was at the property 25 years ago.
Okay. But it doesn't appear as though, because I think the permit was in 2012?
But it's
So
a
it
single
doesn't-
family.
Yeah,
Nah.
so no work has been,
Right, the whole staircase fell through, the roof caved in, so it's very tough to get an accurate assessment of what was.
gotcha.
We just go with what was on the index card of the zoning, which was rooming house.
Okay, and given, I guess, the current condition, it kind of make it probably a bit unlikely that all that happened within the last 6 years. At least that is.
Yeah.
was the last one. All right. Okay, any questions? No. Thank you.
Have a great day, guys.
All right. 2018-10, 5707 St. Albans Way, Michael Hughes.
Hello.
Hi. You're Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, we have this as an application to use the front driveway as a parking pad and alter the garage into living space. Is that
That's
correct?
That's correct.
If you would please raise your right hand to be sworn.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hughes, why don't you go into what's being proposed?
Yeah, we moved into the house with the intention of turning the garage into a suite for my mother. She has visual disabilities. She's being treated for macular degeneration. And we cleared it with the homeowners association. We have documentation from them saying they're in favor.
Anything you can pass up?
Yes. There's the HOA email approval. Also have plans if you don't, I think you have the plans already. There are also other garages that have had similar work done to them in the neighborhood. So we, as a condition of our moving in, we talked to the HOA, made sure they would approve it. We talked to neighbors, et cetera. So it's really kind of critical that my mother have some living space on the first floor so she can access things without having to do the stairs and so forth. So. I should also say that there's ample street parking. It's a detached single-family home, so it's not like our previous residence, which had parking permits and all that stuff. It's a big street, and there's lots of street parking as well when required.
Is there a driveway that's currently there?
There is a driveway currently there, yes.
And where's that located?
The driveway runs right into where the garage is currently, yep,
Okay,
right off the street.
all right, so all right, so you've got a driveway that's already there.
Yes.
The current parking is inside of the garage, but obviously if you take away the garage parking, you're just gonna be parking on the driveway.
Correct. my wife would like to.
Hi,
state.
I'm Susan Hughes. Okay.
Yes. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, as my husband was saying, there's a lot of street parking in this neighborhood. It's unusual in that it's on the outskirts of the city and it's more like the county, so it has that a lot of space on the street to park, which is where most people park. And I'm a little concerned about the way it's worded, that we're asking to turn our driveway into a parking pad, because we can park on the street. It's not that we have to turn the driveway into a parking pad. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's plenty of room to park on the street.
There's also room in the drive.
We don't have to park in the driveway. We just want to turn the garage into an in-law suite for my mother-in-law. So I don't know if that needs to be reworded.
Well, it's interesting to, it's interesting to put it that way. The issue, of course, is that parking in front of, or parking in a front yard isn't permitted. And here you're proposing to take the existing driveway, turn that into a parking pad. But I guess what you're sort of proposing is that, well, you know, you could, instead of parking on the driveway, you could just simply park on the street to satisfy it that way.
Yes.
Now, that sort of begs the question of the continued existence of the driveway. So would you remove the driveway at that point? That was a good picture here.
We do whatever it takes to do what our plan was, which was to have some appropriate living space for my visually disabled mother to be able to live there. So, but people park in their driveways
And on the street.
all in the neighborhood and on the street.
I think
so
the driveway is causing
yeah.
some.
I mean, we are happy. We're happy to adjust what we do to, you know, in order to make this happen.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can work that out. Just trying to pull up a picture.
If we just made it an issue of parking on the driveway rather than parking in the garage, which a lot of people don't, a lot of people's garages are just full of stuff. And so
Yes.
they park on the street. So really, that's kind of, could we change it to that? That's what we're looking for.
Okay. All right, I think I have an idea here. Okay, any other questions?
No.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, 2018 -12, Mohammed Chowdhury. Come forward, please.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
All right, we have this as an application to use the premises for an indoor hand car wash. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Folks, if all those intending to give testimony can raise your right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has reviewed this application and agrees with the Zoning Administration Office that the proposed use is prohibited in a C1 zoning district. Accordingly, the Department of Planning recommends disapproval of the application. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chaudhry, why don't you tell us what's being proposed here.
Yeah, over there with the 24, 23 Greenmount Avenue, I renovate the building, spend around $60,000, and I lease to this gentleman for car detailing or car wash, basically car detailing. And then I find out there's a need a zone approval. So apply for zone. I talk to the community association president and resident agent 2-3 times, and they not disagree anything. So I don't know if they send any letter or not. And this gentleman is from the neighborhood. He know the area, and Greenmount Avenue Street is a very rough street where our property is. Almost 50% property are abandoned, and across the street from us is always drug dealing. But still, I'm willing to spend this kind of money to open up a business. And that neighborhood all is concerning business to cars, like a body shop, mechanic shop, tire shop, that kind of stuff, brakes, whatever is, but belong to those. There's no place for a convenience store because across the street all property are abandoned and people are hanging around all the time, day and night. So even from 1000 block from Greenmount Avenue to 2500 block Greenmount Avenue, last year 6-7 people killed on that street, particularly Greenmount Avenue. So area is not safe. So I think if we get approval, so we conduct some business and that area will be lighted and occupied, and it's good for the community and neighborhood, and maybe reduce the drug dealing in that neighborhood.
Okay, sir.
Darian Hebron. How we can help the community is we're currently a block and a half from the recreation center that's in that community. We also a half a block away from the rehab center that's on 25th Street. We are trying to propose some work programs for both the rehab center to get them back into some self-pride, and we're also trying to help the recreation center. They have a football program and they have a baseball program that we hope to help fund both of those because my child attends said recreation center. So that's how we have a parking lot to our left to ease the traffic. We have also a appointment only plan in place that we won't hinder the traffic. Because typically when you think of car washes, you think of traffic.
The difficulty with this case is that, as Mr. Chaudhry, you have some prior experience with the case from a few months ago involving this location. The particular zoning district that it's in has limitations on the available uses under the new zoning code, I guess under the list of permitted or conditional uses that are allowed within this zone, rather among them is not a hand car wash, even though that may otherwise seem like a good idea at this location, because you've testified today and as you've testified previously, there are a number of automotive-related uses that are adjacent to this location and generally within this zoning district. But the effect of that is that if it's not listed as a permitted or conditional use within the zone, then it's not a use which is which this board can sanction as a use within the zone. I imagine that's what led the planning department to their opposition in this case. But I guess kind of the end of the day is that the restrictions placed within this zoning district don't allow at least under the current code, don't allow this kind of intended use there, even though that may otherwise make sense. Now, I know that there is a process that the council is undergoing right now to try to rectify some of the misclassified zoning districts where there's a classification that was imposed under the on the enactment of the new zoning code that doesn't really reflect the uses that are being made within a particular zoning district and don't promote the kind of uses which already exist there. And I think that this property may certainly be a good candidate for that. That, though, is a legislative fix, and it's one which this board doesn't have the power to fix, though the council person for this, where this property is located does have that ability to put forward an amendment to change that zoning classification. So I think that would, at this point, I think that would be certainly more fruitful avenue than appealing to this board, because we can't approve what you're seeking. That's the kind of unfortunate reality of it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too. 2018-16, 1024 South Bolden Street, Eric Thomas. Afternoon, sir. You're Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Thomas, we have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition with garage at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. If you would, please, raise your right hand to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, we have one letter from the homeowner of 1022 South Bolden Street, who is in opposition, stating that building a two-story structure would only serve the homeowner and greatly diminish the view from our back deck and diminish the aesthetic appeal for the neighbors and tenants that the neighbors and tenants have come to enjoy.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Thomas, why don't you tell us about what is being proposed here?
We're going to add an additional, basically the lot coverage is already at 63 feet. For the addition they currently have, we were going to add another 12-foot addition to the rear of it with a garage beneath it, so it's a two-story addition for 100% lot coverage. The neighboring house at 1022 has an existing second floor rear deck, which they're about 5 feet short of being 100% lot coverage. And that's actually one of my concerns as well, as far as a water view. I'm assuming is what they're talking about. But because of all the 100% lot coverage in three-story houses on the 3200 block of Donald Street, which is the neighboring block, you can't really, there isn't much of a view towards the water in that aspect of it. And there also are three houses on that block that are 100% lot coverage as well, that are two-story or higher.
Okay, and I guess on that first floor, there would be an enclosed garage?
Yes, basically it's just a concrete pad right now. I'm going to take the concrete pad out, build the garage backs with the side entry garage, 16-foot wide garage doors, so you're not hindering the alley for trash removal or anything like that. So it'd also take away a parking spot or add an additional parking spot to the street.
I guess really the So on the second floor, you've got a bedroom over top of the garage?
Correct, yes.
All right,
Yeah.
so I guess the purpose of the garage is to avoid cantilevering the second floor over a parking pad?
Yes, correct. With a couple different options, but basically the only way to be able to get any type of parking back there and still have a bedroom structure above it would be to have it 100% lot coverage. Otherwise, you'd have to have some type of support post back there and it would negate the potential for parking.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And, all right, 2018-15, west side of Rusk Avenue. Is that you folks? Ma'am, which case were you here on? You're on Patterson Park, all right. Okay. Let's jump to that one instead. 2017-467, 400 North Patterson Park Avenue, Robert DuPont. Let them know that they've still got some time. The folks who just went outside? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Mr. DuPont, we have this as an application to use the premises as 2 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Folks, if all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hand to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has reviewed this application and has no objection to it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and folks, before your case was called, you took the opportunity to have a discussion with one another. Were you able to get any questions or objections resolved during your conversation?
It was
I
just
think
that,
so.
yeah, it was the issue of parking. That there's concerns, there's a church across the street and there's no resident parking. I do have a lot on Bradford that's a block away that I can include parking for this home. This home's been vacant for many years. It's an eyesore. I purchased it from a developer that had gone bankrupt. It was at that time, I guess it was a commercial property, and I just wanted to make it a residential, but the size of the residential property, the cost to rehab it and to keep the cost low enough for a single-family home is tough to do. The only way that I could do that would be a 2-family home.
Okay, back it up for a second.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Were you able to get your, ma'am, were you able to get your opposition resolved?
For one thing, yes, and that was the parking that he just
Okay.
discussed.
he's
Okay.
gonna assign parking on Bradford Street. So
Okay.
that one thing has been resolved.
Okay, and what's your remaining issue?
The other issue is that in 2006, I believe, actually when you go to the planning department website, they adopted a plan called the MMF plan for our community, which was between Washington Street, Linwood, Fayette, and Monument. And in that plan, it specifically states that all potential and future rehab is to be within the character of the community. The community is 90% single-family structures, row houses. The plan also points on page, I believe, 43. It says, explore the development of new mixed-use multifamily building in a block bounded by Monument North
So your continued objection is just over the multiple dwellings?
dwellings in the block. Yes, correct, given that in the MMF plan
Okay, so
that
at
was
this
adopted.
point, are you still opposed to it, or would you like to
Yes.
resolve here? Okay. Okay. All right, Mr. DuPont, why don't you tell us what you're proposing then?
Well, I started to do that.
Yes, I know.
And
Before,
a
I just
single-
wanted to know if you
No,
guys
no,
had
I
reached a
understand.
settlement.
I understand.
Now we can go into the merits.
Right.
Since you're still
Right, a
opposed.
single-family dwelling, I would love to do a single-family dwelling, but at that size, I can't make it affordable for the cost to rehab the building. Normally, when I have a building that is an inside unit, the costs are down. This unit's very large. We rehab the entire outside, aesthetically make it look pleasing to the eye, plus adding additional insulation to the building. That
How many square
costs
foot, how
are
many square feet
prohibitive.
is it?
With the full basement and the 3 floors, it's just shy of 3,000 square feet. It was from my records, it was vacant since 1977.
He's talking about is the plan. See, I had seen that, but- Just a moment.
The existing use and occupancy was a 5-person church and 2 vacant floors above it. And you can sell snow balls on the sidewalk. Which today might be hard at the temperature it is out.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not putting any additions on the property, you're basically just taking that rear portion basically and making it its own unit, and then the front structure with 3 stories, you're making that its own unit.
Correct.
I can't really tell from this plan here. I guess this just shows the, oh no, I guess, here we go.
I have larger plans if you, if you need them.
I can sort of decipher it. So it looks like you've got, I guess, Unit B is a 2-bedroom unit, and
A is also a 2-bedroom.
A is also a 2-bedroom. I guess the only difference is that B has one of the bedrooms on the first floor, whereas on A, it's got the living room, kitchen on the first floor, and then the bedrooms on the second and third.
Correct. The only option for additional parking would have been to take a portion of the back of the home down in the alley, but then the only entrance would be off of Orleans Street. Now, that house has been hit twice already by cars running into it. Be hazard making that right turn into a driveway or trying to back out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything further at this point?
No, that's it.
Okay, ma'am?
Again, I was just stating that in the plan, area plan that was adopted by the city, it specifically states that the development should be in character with the neighborhood. There are no other multi-unit dwellings on the block. Again, I think Mr. DuPont, right?
Yes.
Has attempted to address the parking issue if this moves forward. So I would want that somewhere on the record, that these people would be assigned parking on Bradford Street, because parking is difficult in the neighborhood as it is currently now without a multifamily unit. I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to say. While we were out, because this plan was a 2-year plan that was adopted by the community and planning, I did ask Mr. DuPont if he could potentially postpone this so that we could present this to the community more, because some people may be in favor of a multi-unit dwelling now. Things have changed. But given that he has a timeline with his permits, he couldn't postpone this. So I'm here just to defend what the plan says, that the community did not want to bring a lot of multifamily unit dwellings into the community. We wanted everything to stay single family as much as possible. We did point in the plan to a specific area where we thought multifamily unit dwellings could be housed, because that area also provided for parking to accommodate that.
Okay. Mr. French, anything that you want to express on behalf of the planning department with respect to the plan that's just been discussed?
Not being personally familiar with the plan, I'll simply comment that often those plans speak to development of vacant property. In this particular situation, as you've heard, most of this particular block is occupied by 2-story row housing. This particular building, however, is a 3-story building, and it is also different from the other houses on that block because it is built out to the back alley. That's an existing condition, and basically, because the applicant is proposing to reuse an existing structure, the department had no objection to the idea of 2 dwelling units in a structure that's larger than the rest on that particular block.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted you to have the benefit of further reasons of why this property is not seen as being among those that you have in mind.
Well, I do have a question for Mr. French. I don't know if I can ask him that question. But there is a property actually on the opposite side of the 400 block of North Patterson Park. There are 3-story properties that are all single family in that block. So I'm not quite understanding where this would be different, because they all are built out to the back.
What he's saying is that, so there's a plan which applies to a general area, okay? And so the guidelines, which is really what the plan is more appropriately termed as, really have or contemplate more 2-story development or 2-story existing structures that are much smaller. So it's acknowledged within that there are exceptions, such as this property and some of the others. And that with respect to those kind of properties, since they're larger, the kind of plan that's being contemplated doesn't envision that sort of development restriction going along with those particular properties, because they are unlike the rest of the properties that are generally found within the zone. So the contemplation is that when those other properties are being developed or renovated, et cetera, those the guidelines regarding a preference for single-family dwellings, et cetera, doesn't really apply to those. It really only contemplates more the smaller 2-story dwellings as opposed to these larger end-of-unit 3-story
structures that are much larger than the others.
Even though that they're end-of-unit, three-story structures in the block?
Yes, because generally within the zone,
Okay.
most of the housing stock is not that way.
Okay.
Is that basically right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if there's an existing single-family, three-story building, the department is happy that it remains a single-family, but they're in this situation where the building is vacant and has been so for a long time. And secondly, simply put, as was mentioned, it is on, the long side of the building is on Orleans Street, which is a major thoroughfare in the city, and quite frankly, a high-speed, high-volume thoroughfare. It may be difficult to get the property reoccupied as a single-family dwelling under those circumstances.
Okay.
All right. Anything further? That's it? Okay. Mr. DePont?
That's it.
Anything?
That's it.
All right, questions?
No, none.
All right, thank you both.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Oh, Mr. DePont, you had referenced the, ma'am, you can come back up. You had referenced making parking available at another property that you had on Bradford Street.
Correct.
Where is that located?
The 400 block of yes, thank you, 400 block of North Bradford. There's an area.
Basically one street over.
One street over.
So which address?
It's 401 through 411. They're all vacant. We purchased those properties for the houses that were being rehabbed on Bradford Street.
Is it right there at the end of the block, right there at Bradford in Orleans?
No, it's in, there's a row of homes on Orleans. It's right behind a row of homes on Orleans. Bradford is a one-way street, and to rehab any of those houses, they did not have parking. So we came up with that lot that we can put parking in there.
So, looking at this picture here, it's actually more of a diagram. Located like right there on Bradford. It's Bradford, that's Orleans, this is the odd side. That's correct.
All of those is that lot, yes.
All right. You said that was 401 to 411?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or points? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 2018 dash 8, 3119 Eastern Avenue, Brian Cox.
Hello, Brian Kopp.
To the opposition. Okay, there used to be opposition here.
I'm assuming she chose not to oppose. She did tell us that she could see our property from her house, which her house is on the other side of Eastern Avenue.
Well, we'll get into that. I'm just questioning.
No,
the
she
question
chose not to.
Is she
No.
in the restroom or whatever?
She did state she was leaving the building.
Mr. Chair, she did allude to the fact early on that she may not be able to stay for the duration.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kopp, we have this as an application to construct a new second, third, and fourth floors with a two-car front-loaded garage, rooftop deck access from a stairway penthouse, and use the entire premises as a single-family attached dwelling. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands to please be sworn.
Now, you swear or affirm the testimony excuse me, that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes. What's your name, sir? You spoke.
Robert Brendel.
Rendell, how do you spell that?
B like Bob, R-E-N, D like David, E-L.
All right, you're Mr. Kopp, and you, sir? Addison?
First name.
All right, do we have staff reports?
One letter of opposition from the Highlandtown Community Association. They state that the vast majority of single-family homes in southeast Baltimore are two-story homes. This proposed building would be out of character in this historic neighborhood. Additionally, to allow a new four-story home to be constructed in this area could set a new precedent and could lead to additional similar development.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kopp, why don't you tell us about what's being proposed?
We are proposing to build 3 stories on top of an existing 1-story garage and a rooftop deck. Front-loading parking, we're gonna have a 2-car parking, taking a vehicle off the street.
All right. Okay, so the existing property is just a 1-story garage, right?
Well, it was a 1-story converted to a single-family home. So it does have its own address for a single-family home.
Okay.
And that wasn't done by us, that was prior to us purchasing it.
Is it a standalone building?
It is.
Where's this located on Eastern Avenue?
Eastern and Robinson Street.
If you look at the site plan, you'll see that each lot is sitting to the rear of 3120,
Correct.
which is living in a 3119 address, Eastern Avenue.
Sure.
This is the lot 45.
Mm-hmm.
That's the lot in question. The code now is C1 district. Also C1 is the original B22 community business district.
Mm-hmm. I guess the initial issue is that in the C1 district, detached dwellings aren't listed as a permitted use. Row house is identified as a permitted use in the C1. In the C2, row house is conditional with the board, with approval by the board, and in C5, row house use is permitted. Multifamily similarly is reflected, but detached is not. And I guess that comes into play because that makes it non-conforming, the existing structure. And then under 18302, non-conforming uses can't be expanded. Unless the use of the land, the structure made to conform with the regulations of the district in which they're located. But you need a rear yard variance. So,
The structure takes up the whole lot.
yes. That's the rub, though, is that the only way that you can expand the non-conforming use is if the use and structure are made to conform to the regulations of the district. So here, because you're not proposing to remove any of the existing structure, which is non-conforming with the bulk regulations, then therefore you're not conforming with the regulations of the district in which you're located, in which case you can't expand it.
So if they were tearing the structure down and rebuild it, the existing structure, couldn't do it.
If you were to tear the existing structure down and build within the regulation, the applicable regulations, then you could, is with the removal, if you remove it in order to make it complying, you're not abandoning the use. And you would then be able to expand it. But in any event.
It wouldn't be creating a new non-compliance?
No, because I don't think so, because you've got still your intention isn't to abandon the use, you're only removing the structure to the extent that it's non-compliant, in order to make it compliant. But in any event, that's not what's being proposed.
The building would need to come down to the footings regardless. And that was proposed.
So you're saying that you are removing the structure?
The structure would go down to the footings and reuse the,
Can I submit this, sir?
Yeah.
This is from the engineer.
we would use the footings that are there, and we got a structural engineer to prove that they were strong enough to support. So they made us dig down 4 feet and show them, that there's a actual footing underneath of us. So we did do that.
Rebuilding a detached or a row home?
I'm sorry?
Is the new building that's being constructed going to be detached, or is it going to be a row home? Going to be detached?
Yeah, because there's
It doesn't touch. It has a,
Right.
I guess like a small alleyway in between.
Alleyway.
Yes.
3 foot out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that's what the problem is. And in order to expand what is already a non-complying structure, you'd have to make it conform to the bulk regulations, which it currently does not. And if you tear the whole thing down and build over the existing footings, then what you build would not conform. So, that's what your obstacle is. Let's see, what's your? So you've got a rear yard issue. said the address of the property will actually be on Robinson Street?
Well, the address is Eastern Avenue,
Hasn't changed.
It's- even though-
3119.
I think that's a bit of a problem, too. Has it been actually subdivided off?
Yes.
You guys, you're gonna have to use the microphone. I can't hear you.
Yes.
And we need to kind of do one at a time.
So whoever was speaking or wanted to speak, instead of walking over and speaking to me, speak to the microphone.
Well, I was looking for the block plat that I had given you guys because it should have told me.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, when it was subdivided. I think, it was subdivided quite a few years ago, that particular location.
No, the only thing I was just asking about was, because the address is still on Eastern Avenue, even though the property's not on Eastern Avenue anymore. It's on Robinson. So I'm trying to figure out where your rear lot line would be. It's not what's on, what goes up against the alley. It's actually what goes against your adjoining property. Which is 3125 Eastern Avenue.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't think this impacts the appeal before the board, but for the benefit of the applicant. Generally, property location after a subdivision won't approve a property address if it's not abutting or touching a property. So how this property has an Eastern Avenue address, I can't provide you, but it may present problems to you in the future. So you may wish to
Change the address.
to
Yes.
change the address and/or seek some clarification from property location, which is now Apartment Division of the Department of Finance or Transportation now. So just as an FYI.
Ladies and gentlemen, and also for purposes of consideration, I would, in furtherance of that, the consideration of moving the address more appropriately stated to that of Robinson Street, I think that the property itself truly is a row house for consideration, but for an intervening alley, it does reflect that of all characteristics which you'd find for the row home. So the intervention of the alley is the only thing that removes it from meeting the true definition of a row home unto itself. We'd hope that you give consideration from that side.
Well, as I'm thinking about this a little bit more here, the alley, all right, and really, the address here is a little bit of an obstacle, but, so the quote-unquote alley is this little space, 3-foot space, that's located horizontally across the property from Robinson, that bisects the property from the property that's located on Eastern Avenue. And it's not connected to that, or the structure is not connected to that. Now, in the rear, it looks like there's another house that's located there. And I can't tell, or is that because what's in that lot that's right there on 3125 Eastern Avenue? So, all right, here's your property, right here. See that? Okay. what's located right here?
It is an empty lot.
Well, it's an adjacent completed townhouse, approved townhouse.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out what's located immediately in that highlighted space. Because from the aerial, at first I couldn't tell, but from the other one, it looks like it's just an empty space.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So I was gonna say, if it was touching a structure along that side, then you could say that it was detached, I mean, it was attached along the rear, but it's not. And as I'm looking at the table on 10-401 for what your required or minimum, well, yes, what your required or minimum rear yard is, it says that if the rear yard abuts an alley, then none. And I think that the rear yard here abuts both the lot located behind the house, that is 3125, but also the alley. It's what would be the side of the rear yard, runs alongside the alley. So I guess the question is that sufficiently abutting an alley? Mr. French, any input you'd like to make on that point?
Well, obviously, unless one of the neighbors on Eastern Avenue decides to build his building out to the back and actually touch this property physically, it is a detached building. However, the other thing I would note is that although a single-family dwelling is not a permitted use in the C1 district, a live-work dwelling is and a multifamily dwelling is. Now, I don't know if the applicant has any ability to alter the building plan in any way to make the use one of those two alternatives, either a two-dwelling building or a live-work dwelling. And that would be something that I think the applicant should explore in this situation, given the fact that it's certainly certainly apparent from reading the table for the C1 uses that the proposed use is something that is non-conforming under the current zoning.
Okay, I think we might have stumbled on something here. Yeah, I'll try to lay it out a little bit. 18301, right? Okay, so the challenge under 18301 or 18302 is that a non-conforming use, and it's non-conforming because it's a detached structure, and detached structures aren't among the permitted uses, the permitted or conditional uses. It says non-conforming use may not be expanded in any manner, nor may any structure be erected or expanded unless the use of the land and structure are made to conform to the regulations of the district in which they're located. And here, the problem was that you needed a variance for your rear yard. But when we look at the table for 10.301 or 10.401, to find out what your required rear yard is, if your rear yard abuts an alley, and your rear yard would be that portion that runs alongside 3125.
Correct.
In the alley. So your rear yard would be basically what lines up against 3125. If the rear yard abuts an alley, and the definition of abut means to share a common lot line under the code. So if your rear yard abuts an alley, then your required rear yard is none, which means it is complying.
Okay.
So you don't need your variance, which means you can
You're compliant.
expand it. Don't put me up here for a reason. All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Checking on that.
Okay, now I'm back to where it was before. I was with you until Derek reminded us that the address really isn't Eastern Avenue address now.
Well, it's true, but it's, because, think of it this way. So, all right, if Eastern is up here,
Mhm.
right, then the rear yard is here,
Right.
is here, right, abuts, because it shares that rear property line, right? Well, if you change the property address to Robinson, right, so now the rear line,
Probably ever approved that address at all.
the neighboring house, it's a corner. So the side of the rear yard still abuts the alley. It doesn't say. Lot line. It just says it has to share a common lot. So the side is okay. 2018-15, west side of Rusk Avenue, 430 feet 11 inches north of Whitney Avenue. Brian Ellis.
Mark Mordhorst.
Okay. And sir, if you can say and spell that last name again?
Sure. Mark Mordhorst, Mordhorst.
Got the breast? All right. Mr. Owens, we have this as an application to construct a two-story, single-family detached dwelling at this location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Folks, if all those intending to give testimony would please raise their right hands to be sworn.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
All right. Do we have any staff reports?
We have 4 letters from neighbors on that block, as well as a letter from the Mount Washington Improvement Association. The Mount Washington Improvement Association says that they were unable to complete a full assessment. However, they do support the side yard variance request, but are unable to offer a position on the variance request for the parking pad in the front yard. The neighbors expressed concerns to the extent of the overall style and spirit of the neighborhood be preserved, the negative impact on street views, open area, and sunlight, as well as respecting the wishes of everyone who already lives in this community. And finally, one neighbor says that the curb cut should not, or should be on the south side of the property, not where currently proposed.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Owens.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about what you're proposing here?
So I'll start with the bulk and yard regulations for the side. If you look at the site plan, you'll notice that the front, along the curb, the front lottage is 50 feet wide, but the rear is 43. So due to the unique shape of the lot is why we've requested
Why don't you back up a little bit
Yes.
and tell us what it is that you're looking to build?
Oh, okay,
and why?
yeah. I believe we submitted some plans, but this is a single-family home. You can look at some of the drawings. It's a craftsman style that looks very familiar to many of the houses in Mount Washington, especially on that street, across the street specifically. It's about 1,400 square feet, and it will be with a walkout basement in the to the rear of the yard.
Okay. All right, and you were addressing a driveway and a curb cut and parking.
Yes. So, in terms of parking, the original request, and this will still remain, due to the topography of the land, it's, the reason there's a walkout in the back is that the land drops off as you walk backwards. And so, we are requesting to put the parking on the side of the front. And then we've met with Mark here and are willing to move, as with the request of the other letter, we still need a variance, but we're willing to move the parking to the other side of the front, as opposed to the way it's currently drawn on the site plan that you see in front of you. It's currently on the north side of the lot.
So where would you move the parking to? Okay, all right. So you're contemplating the parking staying located in the front, just flip-flopping it to the other property line.
Yeah, that from our conversations with the neighbors, Mark and other folks, the concern was the location of the parking, not to not have parking. As we know, that's required to have at least one off-street parking for the R1.
code, it says that driveways have to be located at least a foot from the side lot line.
Correct.
So with the move to the other side, are you,
We will honor that.
okay?
Yeah.
Anything further at this point?
Do I need to speak about the side yard, or is that?
Sure.
On the shape of the land, because it is an acute angle and shrinks as it approaches the rear, the back corner of the house is less than the 10-foot requirement, so that's the other variance, and we, to our knowledge, haven't received any opposition to that specific variance or request for a variance.
I see what you mean. I was just trying to see if the change in the parking pad from one side to the other would alleviate that problem, but it looks like you would have that regardless, because it tapers. Do you see what you mean? It sort of tapers in from that side anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else at this point?
No,
Mr.
We
Norris.
initially appeared in opposition of the variance request, but in conversation with Brian and his builder, we have come to a compromise. Our withdrawal of opposition is conditional on his ability to move that parking pad to the south boundary of his lot.
All right. All right, any questions? All right, sir, anything further?
Did you, what was it? No, do we need to yes. Do we need to resubmit a site plan with the changes with the permitting process that's already?
Yeah, you can, I guess, draw those up and then just send them in, and we'll make any approval conditioned on receipt of that.
Understood. Okay. Is there a time limit or anything, just before the permits are approved, I assume?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And, unless I'm mistaken, that's everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Want to recall?
Yeah, that one that we already discussed that in session. That was just a deliberation only, and we're gonna move that to another date. All right, and
Check to do not show.
oh yeah,
I didn't see anybody come in.
yeah, good point. 2018-5, 524 East Fort Avenue, Brian Chance. And 2018-17, 711 South Port Street, Dave Carey. Okay. All right. All right, so backing up to, let's make sure that we're clear on it, because it's a little bit confusing in it. The Eastern Avenue one. All right, so what I was saying is that the prohibition is, so it's a detached single-family dwelling,
Right.
which isn't listed as a permitted or conditional use in a C1 zone. So the code says you can't expand a non-conforming use unless it conforms to the bulk regulations. And here, because they were seeking a variance, it obviously wasn't conforming. That was the only variance that they needed was the rear yard. And the property address, really, I mean, it says that it's on Eastern Avenue. It's not. It's on Robinson. Because if I remember correctly, the property has to bear the address of the street that it fronts on, and the only street that it fronts on is Robinson. So that has the effect of taking the property, which is, so if Eastern is along this side, currently the rear lot line is here, and it joins the alley that's in the rear. But the rear lot line runs along the alley in the rear. But if you turn the property and make it now Robinson, here, front of the property is here on Robinson. The rear lot line runs along the side of 3125 Eastern Avenue. So under the bulk regulations for a C1, what it says for required rear yard is that if the rear yard, quote unquote, abuts an alley, then the required rear yard is none. And under the definition of abut, it means to share a common lot line. So because the rear portion of the property does abut, that is, share a common lot line with the alley, it's 0.
I'm looking at this zoning map.
Yes.
So this is Eastern, this is Robinson. So,
And actually, looking at that zoning map, it is assisting me too, because what it says for abut is, it references not just the lot line, but I think it also says the border. Yeah, means to share a common lot line or zoning district boundary without being separated by a street or an alley. And the zoning district boundary runs along the alley. So both in terms of the zoning district boundary and the property lot line, it abuts.
is this red line the alley?
The-
The alley is over here, isn't it? There's two,
Yes.
okay, so this is one alley here.
Foot
I
thing.
believe that little.
Yes, yeah, that's the little
That's
thing
the
that
little
separates
3-foot
it.
alley that's
Yeah,
on
that
the
makes it
that's on the
detached
drawing.
from the one that fronts on
Right.
Eastern Avenue.
And this is also an alley.
Yes, it's like a 10-foot alley that's in the back. And the rear lot line runs along that. But not the rear lot, the zoning boundary runs along that. So that's how it abuts. And because it abuts, then the required rear yard is none, in which case they need no variance, in which case it conforms. Because their only issue was
I'm back
the
with you.
required rear yard.
Yeah.
Were there any others?
I circled St. Albans,
Yeah, that's right.
number 21810.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, you know, it'd be okay if we made a contingent on no parking in the driveway.
Yeah.
They said they were willing to do that.
Right.
No, I was gonna say is that,
You know, from an enforcement perspective, I don't know how that works, but
well, see, that's the thing. I was gonna say that if you got a driveway there and it's like, oh yeah, you can't park in it, that doesn't
Yeah,
make a lot
right.
of sense.
right.
I was gonna say that it just simply be removed. But now the question I have is there well, I guess it's an existing structure. So it's not gonna have parking that goes along with it if you remove the driveway.
Now you've got another variance, parking variance.
Well, see, but it's already existing. Even though,
Yeah, but it was probably built after 1971. We'd have to check on that. I didn't hear any testimony about
Yeah.
when the building was built. So it's not grandfathered out for parking.
mm-hmm.
The previous code required it in 1971. The fact that it said use made me think this is something that came along after 1971.
Good point.
I don't know it, but I suspect it. I'm paraphrasing.
I'm just gonna check that.
I had access to didn't give me enough detail to show whether they could have extended the driveway sideways to the side yard and had parking in the side yard. Sure they
I-
didn't want to spend the money to do that. That was the other alternative.
I had looked at that. 57, 17. One of those, it doesn't come up in the property record doesn't come up in the city or the county. All right.
I also had a question mark by the 10-foot fence.
Doesn't look like the aerial view, doesn't look like
Yeah.
parking could be moved on the other side of the house.
Yeah, I think that's what I'd seen too.
Property line issue based
Yep.
on the.
Yeah, looking at the aerial, it looks like it's already tight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is that probably everybody in the neighborhood probably parks in their driveway.
That's right.
Because as the testimony reflected, the garages are full of stuff.
That's right, yes.
If you go to the Google Street Map view, cruise on down to Google, 7% of the cars are parked in the front.
Right,
Just like every other
right,
similarly designed neighborhood.
right.
Chances of enforcement of that are next to zero.
Right.
All right. So, are we gonna, is it a front yard variance or a? See, here's the thing, is that I'm not sure if you can give a variance for to locate the parking in the front yard.
Because of 16404.
Yeah.
Historically, the board has. in
I
the
don't
old
think so
code,
either.
When there were topographical reasons to use, you know, if code required a parking space in the back sloped at a 45-degree angle, historically the board would say, well, you really can't put it in the rear yard. You can't. Or if the property land line, you can't get to the rear yard, get to the corner yard, or the side yard. But the cases I'm thinking of were all in the old code, not in the current code.
That's right.
See ya.
Thanks. Bryce. Have a good week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This parking space may not be located in the required front or corner side yard. In addition, no parking space may be located forward of the front building line. So I think it has to be a parking variance.
Parking variance.
And I guess what we can say is, all right, we'll give them a parking variance. And then not require removal of the driveway. Sort of knowing what the practical effect of that is.
Mm-hmm.
Precedential value is a little bit concerning.
That's right. That's what I was gonna say. The downside is that. So the alternative is you condition on removal of the driveway, which means you gain a yard. And now, frankly, I think that when I think about it, like what would look more out of place? It would be a house with no driveway.
Then again, with a garage.
Well, whether it has a garage or not, it's gonna look more out of place as you come by, you see this house that's set back with no driveway.
When every other house on the block has a
Right,
driveway.
has a driveway.
Yeah,
You'd also have curb cut that didn't lead anywhere.
yes. So, I say we give them parking variance and then don't require removal of driveway.
Thank you. See, parking variance is not required.
That's correct. Initially, I was leaning towards requiring removal of the driveway, but I think that would, when I think about what that would look like, it would really, I gotta imagine the neighbors would be like, that's just looks dumb.
Well, can we condition the parking variance on, well, I don't know, I'm trying to think of how we can make this work. Some pronouncement that they are not to park in the driveway? I mean, of course, we know that's never gonna be enforced, but
Yes.
does that
Yes.
make it a little bit less
Yes.
funky when it comes to
Mhm.
precedence?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can live with that one.
That was my initial thought anyway, was conditioned on no parking in the driveway. I'm just a little concerned about the,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the precedent setting.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else wants to turn their garage into a additional living space. But I'm okay with that.
All right, any other question about
The fence?
the fence? My thought there is that generally with fences, so
Yeah,
long
that's
as there's some sort of a security need that's expressed, and she said that, you know, her neighbor had an issue with, I guess someone had broken into the house by, I suppose, hopping their rear fence, breaking in and stealing whatever was there. She's a single woman.
Yeah, I was
wants
okay with that.
More security, so,
Okay.
and it's in the rear, of the
Right.
property along the alley.
Okay, 10 it is.
But yeah, 10 seemed a little excessive, but I was like, well, it's gonna be in the alleys. Let me see if there was
Yeah, I'd like to know who the contractor is that can build bigger for the same money.
I know.
Yeah.
Standard size, 2x4s, in terms of cutting for a 6 versus an 8 versus a 10. Just have some deal where you get standard cut size.
Yeah. All right, those are the only ones I had.
Yeah.
Any others? Okay. Ready, Derek?
Yep.
All right, 2017, that's 462, 3738 Gulf Street, was by consent. 2017 467, 400 North Patterson Park Avenue. I'm a yes, conditioned on parking being made available for the residents at 401 through 411 North Bradford.
Yes.
Yes.
2017-479, 4001 Hudson Street was by consent. 2017-44, 4432 Buchanan Avenue was by consent. 2017-486, 12 West Montgomery Street was withdrawn. 2018-1, 605 South Glover Street was by consent. 2018-2, 2543 Eastern Avenue was by consent. 2018-3, 1118 Battery Avenue, I'm a yes.
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 2018-5, 524 East Fort Avenue was a no-show. 2018-6, 2203 St. Paul Street, was by consent. 2018-8, 3119 Eastern Avenue, I am a yes.
Yes.
Agreed.
2018-9, 1923 St. Paul Street, I'm a yes. Yes, with planning
Yes.
commission condition.
Agreed.
All right, 2018-10, 5707 St. Albans Way, I'm a yes, with the grant of a parking variance conditioned on a prohibition against parking in the currently located driveway.
Yes, with that
Agreed.
condition.
2018-11, 1638 East Baltimore Street, I'm a yes.
Yes.
Agreed.
2018-12, 2423 Greenmount Avenue, I'm a no.
No.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. I'd like to see something go there, but
Yeah.
Yes. Really needs to have an ordinance to change that.
Mm-hmm.
2018-14, 115 Marketplace was by consent with planning department conditions. 2018-15 west side of Rustic Avenue, 430 feet 11 inches north of Whitney Avenue. I'm a yes, condition, I guess with the agreed condition that the parking space be located to the opposite property line and submission of new drawings showing the relocation as well as conformance with the side yard variance standard.
Yes.
agreed.
2018-16, 1024 South Bolden Street, I'm a yes.
Yes. Agreed.
Okay, I'm a yes. I was on the fence on that one.
2018-17, 711 South Port Street was a no-show. 2018-18, 5604 York Road was by consent, condition on obtaining a Class 5 liquor license. And 2017-429, 1200 through 1220 East Fort Avenue, we're holding for a special session. All right.
Yeah.
We've been in session, Mike. The Orioles haven't actually gone out and gotten any
Pitching?
worthwhile pitching.
Did you think they were going to?
Well,